Hello there, Salim Omar here from the eCommerce Money Map podcast, bringing you another amazing guest. His name is Alan Koppelman. Alan, welcome.
Thank you for having me on the podcast today.
Awesome. Great to have you. Alan co-founded Nationwide Payment Systems, Inc. in 2001. So he's been at it for some 22 years. And he created this business with a plan to sell credit card processing services and equipment to merchants into the South Florida area and provide concierge-style service for each client. Quickly, his company grew to 1,000 plus clients, and now he's got clients all over the US. And Alan did not always start as somebody who was in the credit card processing company. And I'll ask Alan to start us off by telling us very briefly, high level, his entrepreneurial journey that started from a very different type of an industry and it wasn't credit card processing. So Alan, what was your journey up until that point?
Yeah, well, I had a very cool business journey because growing up, my father was in the clothing business. So manufacturing and then retail stores. And then I got involved in the restaurant business, became a chef, worked for hotels, country clubs. I was executive chef for a hotel company, did consulting, later on owned a restaurant and a catering company for about 4 years. And then by accident, I ended up part-time working for a credit card processor. I found it interesting, because I was helping business owners with their business and I had experience with credit card processing using it in my restaurant. And that part-time journey turned into a year and a half later, launching my own company, Nationwide Payment Systems, because one of the things that I saw, they were just selling like little boxes and people were asking about other things like, oh, I have a point of sale system. How can you hook that up? Or I have a website and I need this thing called authorize.net. And the people I work for weren't really focused on that. And I said, maybe we need to be focused on these other areas. And that's kind of been the theme at the company, is to be a technology first company and focus in on technology that can help businesses.
That's great. And I definitely want to talk to you about technology and putting a payment system in place and all that. But, what comes to my mind to ask you, Alan, I mean, you've been at it for a while in your own business now with the current one, and you've been in other industries as well. You saw your dad, you grew up with your dad owning clothing stores in South Florida, and then you had your own restaurants and so forth. Do you have biggest lessons learned in your entrepreneurial journey? An e-commerce business owner listening to this, I want them to have a takeaway from what your journey has been like, and if there is a takeaway there.
One thing is no guts, no glory. That's like one of my big sayings in business. Like if you're going to do it, you got to just go all in and do it and work hard. My dad always taught me, he goes, oh, even if you have a job, treat that job like it's your business. And, and I look for it, when you hire your first employee, you want that kind of employee. And that's, it's a big journey when you start a business and then all of a sudden, you hire your first employee and now we have 5 employees in the office. So it's, it's an interesting journey. And one thing I would say for e-commerce businesses, that one of the things that a lot of these businesses don't think about is, don't worry that your corporate name needs to match the website or the DBA. Just pick a generic corporate name. And that way, no matter what you call your website, you have your DBA, doing business as, and that can be your website. And that, because depending on what kind of products you're selling and things like that, you don't want the name of your business to kind of maybe disrupt you being able to obtain a bank account. A lot of people tend to, get, especially today, people are getting into these coaching businesses. It's very profitable. Health businesses, selling different types of, health products, CBD, hemp, and, any kind of thing that you could be selling. it's better to pick a generic name. I give that advice to anyone starting a business. So if you call your business J&A Incorporated, then it's going to be, when you go to the bank, they say, oh, what do? You say, oh, we sell different products, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to question you what it is, and you're not going to have a problem obtaining a bank.
Yeah. So really, the name of the corporation can be, or the whatever LLC can be any name. It can be a generic name, but it's the DBA that really matters. Interestingly enough, I was talking to one of my clients. He owns a business. It's a senior care center, and the name of his business is 200 Fly Inc. I was like, Wayne, I'm just curious, that's the legal name. I was like, Fly Inc. So he says, my kids are champions in 200 butterfly, the swimmers. And so that's kind of the origination. So it became a family thing, the 200 flying, 200 meters, butterfly.
Right.
And then the name of his, the DBA is, whatever, they chose. So yeah, that's great advice. And, the earlier thing you shared, what was it? No guts, no glory.
Yes.
That's so true, right? And it's like, it can be very basic advice, but it takes guts to be in business. There is, a certain level of risk. And of course, we want it to be calculated risk. And we want to surround ourselves with smart people, smart advisors, smart employees, and all that. But that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. And then hard work, right? Like basic stuff. If you'd asked me that same question, and I was like, yeah, my answer may not have been all that different to yours. And I've been at it for some 25 years in business. And so, yeah, being in business can be, it does require that. Now, how can the small business owner, using, technology and, the conversation we had earlier, what are some of the things that the small business owner, the e-commerce small business owner needs to think about, keep in the forefront when it comes to running their business?
It's very important for e-commerce owners to, understand how much you're spending, on your business to operate, know what your expenses are, know how much, you're spending on whatever, web hosting, your website and things like that. And keeping your website up to date is very important. Making sure, I'll review an e-commerce website and then they don't have basic policies on there. So you need to have a privacy policy, terms and conditions, a return policy, a refund policy. You need to make sure people are aware of the shipping times, because that became a big issue over the last couple of years during the COVID times. Things were taking a long time to get shipped because you don't want to get charged back. And then also during the checkout process on your website, making sure that it's set up with little check boxes. Oh, I agree to the terms and conditions. Shipping takes, 3 to 5 days, or maybe it takes longer. Right. And, so that people know what that is, and have a system where, you're communicating with your customer so they get the tracking number and they know this isn't coming for 2 weeks. Or make sure that it's communicated to them correctly so that they don't dispute the charge. And another thing a lot of small businesses don't do is they don't have their phone answered 24 hours a day. And that can be the difference between, staying in business and getting put out of business. It's very important to get a phone number, and you can find an answering. When I first started in business, it's funny. One of my friends says to me, oh, you need a cheap answering service? Find someone that answers phones for doctors' offices. And I was like, really? It was a very inexpensive solution. So there was a doctor office company. And at the end of the day, we had the phone programmed at 5 o'clock. It went over. We actually just left it over there 24 hours a day to this answering service. They would answer the phone. And then back then we had a beeper.
Yes. Pager? A pager.
Yeah, pager, beeper, whatever.
Yeah.
They could type a message and send it to you. And that was the monthly cost. They gave you these, the pager. Now they just basically send you a text message or an email. Hey, Susie called, blah, blah, blah. And that can make the difference where you don't get a chargeback from a customer. Chargebacks are so easy to happen. Someone just goes online to their credit card, hits dispute, boom. And next thing you know, you could lose your product. The other thing is to train people all the time is be cognizant and careful of the shipping addresses. This is a big, huge problem because there's a lot of, you could call it friendly fraud. I call it online shoplifting. There's a lot of scammers out there. They'll come to your website. They'll buy one, they'll buy one of these, whatever this thing is, and they'll get it shipped to a UPS store. And then they'll say, oh, well, that person is not being mindful. So then they'll come back, use a stolen credit card, order 100 of them or 50 or whatever, place an order for lots of different items, right? Maybe for hundreds or thousands of dollars, and have it shipped to the UPS store. You ship it out, the person gets the box, and then the card holder that doesn't know anything about it goes and does a chargeback, and now you lost your product and your money. So the thing that's to be important is to make sure you're, when you get a large order, you're checking the address, making sure it's a legitimate, home address or a business. And then don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call the person and verify who they are. And if you're not satisfied, go in and void the transaction. Don't let it go through and then do a refund. Just void it out. It costs you just a transaction fee. And I can tell you that training, when I give it to merchants, comes in very handy in saving them a lot of heartache.
Great advice. When it comes to payment technology, give us some points, if you can, on what are things that the e-commerce business owner keep in mind to run their business, better, with the right payment technology.
You need to make sure like what platform you're building your website on, and then what's required to get a merchant account. Are there any businesses that platform might exclude from processing? And make sure that you're not building your site somewhere where they're not going to accept your type of business. That's one thing. And, from a technology standpoint, understand how the gateway works. How do the fraud controls work? Why they're important to be used. If you don't know, ask. I remember when I was going to culinary school and studying hospitality management, they said, oh, the stupidest question's the one you didn't ask. So it's important to ask questions and understand how everything works. Someone who's been in the payments industry is going to be able to guide you and help you, or sometimes you can even call up the gateway and ask them questions and make sure that you understand how to use the software and all that. And, today, many e-commerce businesses also get into someone calls them on the phone and wants to buy over the phone. So learn how to use the invoicing feature so you can send the person an invoice. They can do a click and pay and like that. And also many merchants, we get a lot of e-commerce merchants, they just want to add on the mobile device for their cell phone. And that way, when they're out and about, they can still make sales. I notice a lot of e-commerce businesses, they'll go to trade shows, they'll go to local trade shows to sell their product, farmers markets, craft markets, different types of things like that. Even a lot of shopping centers allow like pop-up store day, like near my house, there's a shopping area, and every couple of months during the not so hot times in Florida, right? When it's 100, nobody wants to go. But they'll have like pop-up store day in the parking lot, and then they rent out, people come and put up a tent. And a lot of those businesses are e-commerce businesses, and they're out there helping to get more business, back to their site.
Are you finding preferred ways for consumers to pay?
Yeah, consumers want to be able to, when they go check out on your site, they want to make sure, that, you're taking all major credit cards, that a lot of people try to pay, some people are using their Apple Pay. So there's ways to do that, but I would be very careful, because I tell business owners, understand that, if you work with Apple Pay or Google Pay directly and not through your regular credit card processing channel, and someone does a chargeback, you're not going to be able to fight it. So I tell people don't use those services directly because, they don't have the same protection as a merchant
Mm,
because it's almost like a peer-to-peer payment.
mm.
Like you send money through Zelle or Cash App and you send it to the wrong phone number, you can just kiss that money goodbye. And it's kind of the same thing with that. So you want to make sure you're taking all major credit cards. Consumers like to pay with credit cards because it gives the consumer protection. If they don't get their product, they can do a chargeback. But some of these other services are more, they're more in favor, they're not in favor of the consumer, and that can cause problems because you don't want anybody to go on your Google My Business page, right? Which is important to have. Even if you have an e-commerce business, you should have a Google My Business page. And you don't want anybody going on there making a complaint on Google or on wherever they can put it, on your Facebook page, or go to the Better Business Bureau and make a complaint. You want to limit, you want to make sure. That's why it's important to have a phone number on your website. That way your phone's answered 24 hours a day and they know they reached the person and someone call them back and deal with whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
It's the wrong size or whatever it is. Product came broken in the box,
This is very good. One of the things I do, or my team does when we are, meeting and advising clients, is to not put all their eggs in one basket. And, when it comes to payment technology and merchant accounts and so forth, most of our listeners are going to be $500,000 in revenues and over, many over 7 figures. And they have merchant accounts set up. And let's say, and they're really entrepreneurial, they want to always start something else, something new, which is great. Should they get another merchant account, or, so that they're not putting all their eggs in one basket? Or is there any merit to doing that?
So some businesses will let's say they're doing a large volume of business. And let's say maybe they have a credit challenge, but if you're talking about somebody that doesn't have a credit challenge, sometimes it's good to have, 2 merchant accounts, but you have to be careful when you're doing that. We have businesses that do several $1 million a month. So we utilize technology called load balancing. Load balancing, let's say someone has 2 merchant accounts, they can program in the gateway, 50% goes to company A and 50% goes to company B, or however you want to divide it up. Maybe you have 3 accounts, 40% here, 20% here, and 20% there, and so on and so forth. You could divide it up. But it's always good to have a relationship with a company where you can grow, because you don't want to have to constantly go get merchant accounts. And the other thing to be aware of, that in the last 3 to 5 years, we've seen the largest amount of consolidation in the credit card industry that's ever happened. And most of it's happened in the last 3 years. And those consolidations are going to make it next to impossible to do what, like, some people would go out and get 10 merchant accounts. It's pretty much impossible to do that today because all these companies are basically gobbled up, and we have about less than half of the processors around that there used to be. And because of that, they can see inside of their system, hey, here's a guy and he has like 5 merchant accounts running through our system through 5 different partners, but still it's the same company on the other end. And a lot of
there's no hiding.
Yeah. Well, also they track you by your federal tax ID number also. Then they start to see like, oh, here's a guy, same federal tax ID, and there's 10 merchant accounts. And the other thing people need to realize, this was a phone call I had this morning, right? So somebody was telling me they're having a problem with the credit card processor, and they had 1 corporation and then they had 4 websites, and they got a letter saying from the processor saying that they need to stop taking payments on this website because they didn't set it up. So, the rules have changed from the credit card companies, and you have to register all your URLs. Now, they don't care if you process payments on 5 websites through 1 merchant account, but you have to register all your URLs with them. So they're registered. Now, some processors don't mind that and some don't like it. So you have to make sure that it's allowed when you go to do that, because a lot of people will do that. They'll have, a URL for shirts and a URL for sweatshirts and a URL for cups, maybe. And then, the person's getting billed maybe under a generic name, but the URLs aren't registered. So you have to make sure all your websites are registered with the credit card processor. And, some of them might require a separate merchant account for each one. Some of them might not allow that because they're able to issue dynamic descriptors for each website. So you have to make sure, if that's something that you want to do, that the person you're working with is able to accomplish that. And don't listen to somebody who says, no, don't worry about that, because I know people who've ended up on the match list. Get a credit card account for 7 years. So you don't want to mess up any of the rules that are out there.
That's great, Helen. This was so informative. Really appreciate it. What's the best way for a listener to reach out to you?
Well, you can go to my website, nationwidepaymentsystems.com. You can find out all our company information. We also have a podcast called B2B Vault, where we talk about business, all types of things with business. We've done all sorts of, podcasts, have over 150 episodes. I enjoyed being on your podcast. So you can go to nationwidepaymentsystems.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Those are the easiest ways to find me.
Awesome.
I'm out there. You just Google me, you'll find me.
Good. I'm glad you haven't kept yourself a secret. Ellen, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. This was amazing.
Well, I'm glad I could be there. And every business owner should always remember one thing, which I told you in the beginning. Technology is the great equalizer. Technology can make a small business look big and a big business look bigger. So use technology, to your advantage to grow your business.
I couldn't have asked for better words of wisdom than those. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.